Hello, my name is João Rodrigues. I am the chairman of the FECTU, the European Draft Course Federation, and it is my great pleasure to be here today with you in this online symposium and to be able to talk about animal traction in the Iberian Peninsula and to tell you a little bit of what is happening over the last 10 years, both in Portugal and in Spain. But before that, I would like to introduce FECTU for those who are not aware of the European Federation. FECTU stands on its original name for Fédération Européenne du Cheval de Trait pour la Promotion de son Utilisation, and it was established in 2003 in Luxembourg, when 7 organizations related with the promotion of animal traction met for the first time and created FECTU as an umbrella organization. Today, in 2022, FECTU has 22 active members from 16 European countries, from Portugal to Czech Republic, from Sweden to France, so basically covering the entire Europe. And this federation represents nowadays the working horse scene, acting as a contact point for individuals as well as organizations and government bodies. For example, it represents the working horse sector in the umbrella organization European Horse Network. When specifically talking about the Iberian Peninsula, we can see 4 members of the FECTU based in this corner of Europe. We have APTRAN, that is the Portuguese Association of Animal Traction, based in Portugal, and then we have 3 different NGOs in Spain, Antelasteva, the National Association of Animal Traction, and then 2 other members, ACTA, that is the Catalonian Association of Animal Traction, working in the northeast area of the Iberian Peninsula, and on the northwest, in the Galicia region, we have ACATRAN, the Galician Association of Animal Traction. Let me invite you to come with me to 2012. Let's go back 10 years in time, when actually the Portuguese Association of Animal Traction and the National Association of Animal Traction in Spain were created. This happened when a group of people converged together and established the initial contacts. And the interesting aspect here is that the initial group of people who actually create these 2 different NGOs were quite different. On the Spanish side, the profile, let's say, of people who actually created the National Association of Animal Traction correspond to a profile of professionals using animal traction. They were all farmers, mainly dedicated to market gardening, and they use animal traction on a regular basis. It was something traditional. Although the group was quite diverse, but let's say the core group was mainly from the eastern part of Spain, from the Valencia region, and they use horses a lot in this area for market gardening. But what is really remarkable is that this group of people, on a individual basis or on small groups, they already started a revolution back in 2012, because they actually improved the harness and they actually improve the implements. So somehow they move away from what was the traditional animal traction use by improving and creating some really interesting tools, small scale tools, mainly walk behind tools, but that are nowadays completely disseminated in Spain, and even some of them being used in Europe. But in that time was somehow a revolution, taking what was traditional and improving it into a level that can be used on a professional level by these modern users. I will show you some examples in a second. And here you have a very good example of a tool carrier. It is called the Forcat. It was based originally on the traditional plow, but it was improved, it was transformed into a tool carrier. The ergonomy of the operator was taken into account. It's very light, it's perfect for small farms. So it was somehow, I think the process was similar with what happened in many parts of Europe. Someone felt the need to improve or to develop a specific tool, then that tool was good not only for that person, but for the farmers in the surrounding areas. So sooner or later, that person starts manufacturing, or someone locally starts to manufacture that tool. And this is actually what happened. They developed this tool for their needs, and nowadays is a tool that is being distributed and used for most farmers who are using animal traction here in the Iberian Peninsula. But As well, I would like to call your attention for the color this mill is using. That's another, back in those times, it was a prototype, but then became, I would say, a color that is being quite disseminated in different parts of the Iberian Peninsula. It's cheaper when compared with other colors in Europe, but it does the job. It's very comfortable for the animal. It's light. And this is actually another example of the work done by this group of people when they first start with the Spanish Association. Actually, it was a work that they did before that, because one of the members, who is now the president, Abel, he's actually a professional harness maker. So it was part of his work. And here the forecut being introduced to a group of farmers in a training session in the early years of this Spanish Association of Animal Traction. On the Portuguese side of the border, back in 2012, the remaining users of animal traction were still the traditional ones. Like, this is a good example: traditional farmer plowing with a pair of donkeys, Mirandese donkeys, big donkeys, used mainly for mule production in the past, of course. But as you can see, very traditional plow, what we call the Roman plow, a tool with 2,000 years when it's first arrived in the Iberian Peninsula with Romans, and very traditional harness, in this case a yoke type system where these two donkeys are working together. So it was somehow a phenomenon of modernization of animal traction happening in the Spanish side, while in the Portuguese side, traditional users were still using the same traditional systems. Although another group of experts joined together and created the Portuguese Association of Animal Traction. These were not animal traction experts, but they thought that the use of animals, the use of animal traction, was actually an excellent tool for the areas of interest and expertise. So with a big group, or with a fair group of professors from the Polytechnic Institute of Bragança, together with a group of other experts, the Portuguese Association of Animal Traction was created. And here you could see agronomists, where their area of interest was actually the preservation of the soil. You could see veterinarians, where their area of interest was the preservation of the native breeds with this aptitude to work, like the donkeys I just showed you. You could see forest engineers, who were actually trying to preserve native forest and were seeking for a sustainable solution. So when the Portuguese Association was created, the type of member was actually, and still is, very different from the Spanish Association. But the truth is that these two very different type of people, they cope really well together. And since 2012, these two organizations develop a huge amount of work together, as I'll show you next. Very soon, these two NGOs realized that there was a big need for, and a big demand for training. There was people, they were actually asking for training in terms of animal traction, in terms of harness, in terms of implements, in terms of sustainable ways to manage the land. So with this knowledge, with this scientific and technical knowledge on the Portuguese side, combined with this technical knowledge specifically, or more specifically focused on animal traction, these two NGOs started a very successful training program that started in 2013 with the first events, and both individually but also together over the last 10 years, this training program happened over and over and over again, with activities of 1 day, 2 days, up to activities of 1 entire week, such as this image that you have here. That is a training course that happened in the Polytechnic Institute of Bragança, where somehow you can see the reflex of what I just told you. In the center, you have a Portuguese donkey plowing these vineyards, and on both sides, you have the two mayors of Rodrigues, who was the main trainer from Spain, a professional from Spain, coming and sharing this knowledge in terms of animal traction. And this partnership happened over and over and over again, and actually allow a group of people to be trained and allow a group of new professionals to enter in the markets and gradually and step by step to establish their own business, or if not a business, to start using animal traction for their own use in an attempt to close the cycle in their own farms and to be more sustainable by using animal traction. But an important aspect is that we never forget the important role of the traditional farmers. It is not the fact that we decided to call it modern animal traction to the type of animal traction that we were promoting on both sides of the border that we forget about the important role of these traditional farmers. If the animal traction reaches the 21st century and if it's still alive, is because these people pass it from generation to generation. So every time we have the chance, we invite the traditional farmers to be part of the training courses. Every time we have the possibility, we go to the villages where donkeys, mules, and horses, and even cattle are still used for draft purposes, and we organize events where sharing knowledge is the key word, I would say. So that's another important aspect, I think, and it's a good example to follow. Is please never forget in those places where traditional animal traction users are still present that they hold a huge amount of information, a huge amount of knowledge, and it is really important to share information with them and to learn from them. And this is something important that I'd like to highlight here. But going back to the work these NGOs did, it is important to mention that in 2016, there was this key event in this university that was the Mountains 2016, and it was an international conference, and the goal of this conference was to promote sustainable development in mountains based on science, knowledge, and innovation. And we thought that it was the great opportunity to bring animal traction into the equation. So we managed to organize a symposium inside this Mountains 2016 where animal traction was the central topic. We brought a group of international speakers, and we managed to have animal traction as part of the key topics discussed when talking about sustainable development of mountains. And it was very remarkable. So remarkable that we even were invited to publish a paper. At the end of this conference, the group of speakers of the symposium were invited to write this paper, the 21st Century Mountain Sustainable Management of Mountainous Areas Based on Animal Traction, which I think it was really important for the work we were doing together with this university. In the universities, and this is something I really would like to highlight here, it's very important to bring universities into this animal traction world. It is with great pleasure that I counted in the program of this online symposium 5 or 6 different universities from the States, but also from Europe. And I think this is really, really important. We need to have the academia involved in animal traction. We need to have science involved in animal traction. We need to prove the benefits of animal traction with facts, with scientific data. So actually, after this first paper, a series of other research studies were performed in this university. Studies mainly focused on soil conservation. To be fair, the soil department was one of the first to understand the importance of animal traction. So they started a series of studies where high technology was used. Like, for example, in this picture, where a series of sensors and electric impulses are being passed through the ground. The idea was to obtain profiles like this one. But basically, the important here was that comparison is always tricky and can be tricky, but it's part of the equation. So it was important to understand, in terms of the soil structure, the benefits of using animal traction when compared with conventional tillage methods. And again, another paper was written, and that was really interesting because suddenly, when talking about animal traction, At the beginning, it was a little bit like, who are these guys and why they are bringing animal traction when we're in 21st century, the area of the diesel, the area of the machines. But then they realized it was a very interesting topic for research, something interesting, something important. And it was the fact that these papers were published actually opened some very interesting doors. One of them, and for me, one of the most remarkable, was that for the first time, the Technical Scientific Council of the university accepted to give credits to the training course that we were promoting on an annual basis. So that 50-hour course that I show you the image with the donkey and with the horses plowing in the vineyard suddenly became an extra curriculum signature for this Polytechnic Institute. And that was a remarkable step. So step by step, animal traction was not only a topic of research, but it also became a topic to be taught in the university level, which I think was really, really important. That was in 2016, and this year, for the first time, that signature actually is no more an extracurricular signature and became a core signature of the career in the technical scientific courses that they are delivering in this university. So what it started with a 50-hour course now is a signature, and I think this is really important. But let me make a small break here and going back to the map of the Iberian Peninsula. And the reason why I'm going back is because due to all the work these two NGOs did together, where people from Catalonia, people from Galicia were involved, with the Galician people being mainly involved with the Portuguese Association and the people from Catalonia being mainly involved with the Spanish Association, and it was mainly due to the geographical location of this group of people. These people, they actually realized that in their own geographical areas, there was a group of people who attended the training courses, who show interest in terms of animal traction, and they share not only this same geographical location, but they also share common interest. They are from the same region. So in a very natural process, the Galician and the Catalonian Association were created, and now we have these 4 FECTU members in Portugal and in Spain. And somehow the process was repeated on a more local scale. We see the Catalonian Association developing their own training program in collaboration with professional schools in the region. We see something similar happening in Galicia. So this is just to highlight that actually training and formation and information should be the key to promote this modern animal traction. So with more people involved and more people wanting to learn about animal traction, there was the next step, that was the development of training courses specifically focused on areas of interest. Animal traction in the Iberian Peninsula goes exactly the same direction as animal traction in Europe and in the world. We have these, let's say, 3 main areas of interest: the vineyards, the market gardening, and forestry. And we felt that there was enough public to organize specific training courses. So this one, for example, is the edition of 2019, was actually the last course before the pandemic, so the last big training course. And it was a 5-day course specifically focused on forestry management. And again, together with the Polytechnic Institute of Bragança, we managed to have a very complete training program where technical aspects from forest management were approached by their professors, and then the technical aspects of the animal traction were approached by a group of professionals invited for this course. But we still managed to keep the credit system for this course, and that was important. This is just a picture of the practical part of the course. One of the things we try to promote was and is the use of different equids. We cannot forget that we are in the southwest part of Europe. We have a weather and a climate that doesn't allow us to have big breeds of draft horses like in the rest of Europe. Those that we have here were imported from Europe, but it is something important to continue to promote our native breeds of horses, of donkeys, and of course the resulting hybrids. But here, for example, the forestry course and the use of logging arches and different vehicles allow us to show that even smaller equids with the correct type of equipment, both in terms of harness and implements, they can do a lot of work without increasing their effort. And I think this is important as well as a good message to be delivered. And here's just another example of a training course specifically focused on small-scale gardening. Again, using donkeys and horses and mules, but somehow following the example of France, where here on the left we have the cover of a book called The Line Marchère. And in our training courses, I think for small-scale gardening, donkeys, they have a serious word to say, especially these big European breeds. They can be quite strong and they can do a lot of work if we select the right harness and if we select the right implements. So we are also delivering a lot of training in terms of specific areas, not only of forestry, but also market gardening. And the good thing that happened over the years is that some people became professionals, some people became service providers. Of course, we need to be serious and we need to be realistic. From I would say that less than 5% of the people who received this training actually became professionals. That's a reality. But it is also true that the number of users is increasing and that we are completely sure that the training program has responsibility on that. And this is as important as being professional, is that amateur people who actually want to work with the animals at home, they do it in a safe way, they do it in a correct way, they respect the dignity of the animals, and they understand the importance of good harness, of good implements, and they understand how to work properly with the animals. So this training program has an important function, not only to form and to prepare professionals, but to make sure that the amateurs, they perform and they do the work in a very professional way. But of course, the professionals, they do exist. And if there is one area where we see more and more professionals, and that's because there is an increase of the demand, is in the wine production. This is the webpage of a very well-known winery in Catalonia, Raventós Blanc. And as you can see in their webpage, they said on the right, they say wine growers since 1497. So as you can see, there is a very old family, a very old company with a lot of tradition. But on the right, at the same level, they said animal traction. And as you can see, they say pioneers in animal traction. We work with this ancestral practice to carry out more precise work, structure the soil, and prevent compaction for our soils, and thus help to have more life and fertility. So there is clearly the promotion for the use of animal traction as something positive for their wine. And this is something that is happening more and more. So another good example to follow from the Iberian Peninsula. Of course, in other areas of France, of Switzerland, it's happening as well. But for us who represent the NGOs, and for me in this case, representing FECTU here, seeing these big companies assuming and accepting that animal traction is something beneficial is a pleasure, of course. And showing some other good examples, this is something that is happening in a small village in the northwest of Portugal. The village is called Paredes de Coura. It's, I would say, an unusual village because it's small and many things happen there. And a big project that they have right now there, it's called the Rural Lab, Laboratório Rural. And the idea is to use the protected landscape that they have there, 2.2 thousand hectares of protected landscape, as a big lab, an open-air lab, where universities, NGOs, and research centers were invited to identify problems that affect the local population, the rural population, and to search for solutions for this. So these solutions will help to improve the life of these rural people. And the reason why I'm saying this is because the Portuguese Association of Animal Traction was actually a founding member here. So this project is promoted by the local municipality. So here we have someone who is part of decision-making chain, a local municipality, promoting a consortium where right now 9 universities from Portugal, from Spain, and even from Brazil are involved, and a small NGO of Animal Traction was actually here, and Animal Traction was selected as a tool of excellence to promote sustainable management of this landscape. So since 2020, we've been developing a lot of work in these areas, showing how to properly manage the land by using these low impact methods. Like this is an image of the forest there, and it's been managed using Animal Traction. And there's been a lot of news in Portugal around this on national TV, on national newspaper, and that's of course an excellent opportunity to promote Animal Traction. And here just another good example. There was an European project called Life in Common Lands happening in the northwest of Galicia, in the Atlantic Mountains, in some pit bogs, where there was the need to remove pine trees that were planted on the 50s and the 60s of the last century. So there was this need to remove these pine trees. And the local authorities said that the conservation status of this area, heavy machinery could not be involved in this process. So the responsible, the University of Santiago de Compostela, the University of Lugo, and the local authorities that were responsible for this LIFE project, they invited a team of professionals that were actually people from the Portuguese and the Spanish Association of Animal Traction, and this task was performed. Some of this is a very unique environment. These pit bogs are quite inclinated, very similar to what you can see in the northern parts of Scotland. These pine trees, although they are quite small, they were 50, 60 years old. And this, I'll show you in a second. This is just a map of the area. As you can see, these lines here, I don't know if you can let me just bring the laser. These lines here are actually lines of trees. So here there's another one. So animals were pulling the trees in this direction, making these corridors. And then there was a tractor on the top part outside the pit bog. There was a cable of 400 meters and a special sled was designed. So the sled was pulled into this corridor by the animals, and then it was loaded manually, and all these trees were pulled out of the pit bog by the cable, and the soil was left intact. Here you can see that these sleds were actually quite big, 1.8 meter by 4 meters, and you can see the horse pulling it downhill, and you see the cable, and on the top you can see the tractor. It was the interesting thing, and the reason why I'm using this example was because it was the first time that Animal Traction was used in a LIFE project, at least as soon as I'm aware, in the Iberian Peninsula. And because of this work, a new LIFE project was approved right now to preserve the Iberian wolf. There is some habitat conservation that is needed, and responsibles of that LIFE project already contacted me, and they want to repeat the operations with Animal Traction. So it's very interesting to see that such technology is being used for habitat conservation, and step by step things are being considered. Animal Traction is being considered as something useful for land, soil, and landscape conservation. And thank you so much for your attention. I think my idea in this small presentation was just to highlight how these small NGOs over a period of 10 years managed somehow to bring animal traction into the equation, managed to involve universities, managed to reach decision makers, and managed to prove and to show that animal traction is a solution, or is part of a solution for the future. And I think this is something important. Thank you so much. Obrigado, and happy to hear your questions and to answer them. Thank you.